Hurricane warnings are in effect for the Louisiana coastline. Good Monday evening. I'm Mike Naso with our coverage of Tropical Storm Francine, forecast to become a powerful hurricane, a Category 2 of 100 miles per hour prior to landfall on Wednesday evening in the mid-Louisiana coastline. Taking a look at the entire Atlantic right now, we do have our main feature, Tropical Storm Francine, a very large, sprawling system. If you notice, it almost looks like one of those candies in a wrapper here, and it extends a large area of wet weather. And look at this outflow here streaming southwest towards the southern hemisphere. Very, very favorable outflow on the southern side, and then it's going to have some conditions further to the north and east that are not so favorable. We'll talk about that. Here's the latest on Francine from the National Hurricane Center. As of 10 p.m. Central, 11 p.m. Eastern, it was centered at 24.3 north, 96.2 west. Winds are 65 miles per hour, so it's a moderate to strong tropical storm, and it is still moving north-northwest at 5. The aircraft have been flying out there all throughout Monday morning, Monday evening, finding that the pressure is about 992 millibars. So it's not a hurricane yet, but it should become one on Tuesday, and then strengthen potentially a little bit rapidly into a Category 2 hurricane and make landfall sometime Wednesday night in Louisiana. We have a hurricane warning in effect from Sabine Pass all the way over to Morgan City, and then a hurricane watch from Morgan City to Grand Isle, Louisiana. So the entire Louisiana coastline here needs to be on alert for a hurricane strike on Wednesday evening. We also have tropical storm watches and warnings from Mexico all the way up to the Louisiana coastline, and a tropical storm warning here in areas near Brownsville. You guys are very close to some tropical storm force winds. I'll show you that on radar in a minute, and that's going to cause some gusty conditions. Nevertheless, it should strengthen. It's been dealing with some dry air, and we noticed that earlier. It had a very tight core on radar, and then it sucked in some drier air, which stopped the the more rapid development that we saw, and that happens very frequently. You'll get a tropical storm that looks, oh my goodness, it's forming an eye, it's going to be a hurricane in an hour, and then all of a sudden it takes a big gulp of dry air, especially from these mountainous areas here in Mexico. There's a lot of mountains in Mexico. It sucks in some dry air, and that kind of messes with the core. Nevertheless, it should be able to consolidate, become a Category 1 hurricane, then a Category 2 hurricane. Now, as it approaches the Louisiana coastline, it's going to run into some wind shear. Look at this wind shear map. This is crazy. Tropical Storm Francine is on the precipice of very favorable wind shear to the south, the greens down here, and extremely strong wind shear to the north. That's probably only going to get worse when that trough moves down over Texas and Louisiana and picks up Francine. So extreme wind shear to the north here, and very favorable wind shear to the south, and Francine in the middle saying, what do you want from me? However, Francine should have enough influence to the north with the jet and enough favorable wind shear to the south with those hot Gulf waters to strengthen and become a potent hurricane. Here's the radar out of Brownsville. I mentioned before, some of these rain bands here could have tropical storm force winds, maybe even sustained. And so if you're in Matamoros, Mexico, Padre Island, Texas, even up towards Corpus, be ready for some very gusty winds with some of these rain bands. Hopefully we could get them in and out as Francine will pool to the north and then eventually the northeast. The main threat with Tropical Storm Francine, soon to be Hurricane Francine, will be the storm surge. Remember, right now we're dealing with a 65-mile-an-hour tropical storm, but the Hurricane Center is predicting that this is going to make landfall as a 100-mile-per-hour Category 2 hurricane. That is a serious hurricane. I mean, I go through some hurricane seasons that I've tracked even when I was a teenager or kid. We didn't have a single hurricane hit the United States. This year, we've already had two. Beryl in Texas, Category 1, and Debbie in Florida, Category 1. Now we're expecting a Category 2 strike on Louisiana. So this hurricane season may be odd, but it is certainly packing a punch when it does. The storm surge between Cameron and Port Fourchon, 5 to 10 feet above normal tide levels, that does not include the waves crashing on top. So you're talking about very nasty conditions, okay? So that's the main threat. When you're dealing with this area of Louisiana, here, let me show you this inundation map. Is so low lying, so marshy. You know, you got oil rigs and you've got um, industrialized business areas and redfish. This is a very, very wet area on a dry day. So you add in the landfall of a Category 2 hurricane, and we'll deal with some inundation here. So again, anywhere along these areas of Marsh Island and south of White Lake, Grand Lake, Cameron, Louisiana, all these areas, Holly Beach, and I'm trying to remember here, Intercoastal City. You guys really, really have to be at high ground, even with the landfall of a tropical storm, let alone what is forecast to be a Category 2 hurricane. So it's very serious. The rainfall could be an issue as well as it pulls on to the north. Eventually it's going to dissipate, and because it's moving fast, we shouldn't have a prolonged threat of rain, but still some rainfall. There's the radar again out of Brownsville, and the heavy rain right now is going to impact North Mexico and Texas, but as the system pulls to the north, that will head towards Louisiana. The key messages on Francine as of 10 p.m. Central, 11 p.m. Eastern. Number one, there is a danger of life-threatening storm surge for portions of the upper Texas and Louisiana coastline. They have a storm surge warning in effect. Residents in that warning area should follow advice, including evacuation orders that are given out by your local officials. Secondly, damaging and life-threatening hurricane-force winds expected in portions of southern Louisiana on Wednesday. A hurricane warning is in effect. Preparations to protect life and property should be complete by tomorrow night, Tuesday night, since those tropical storm conditions are expected to begin early on Wednesday. So you got about, if you're watching this update around, say, midnight Tuesday morning, you got about 18 to 24 hours. Number three, Francine is expected to bring the heavy rainfall, the risk of flash flooding along northeast Mexico, Texas coast, Louisiana, into Mississippi by Thursday morning. And again, even the Mid-South from Wednesday night into Friday morning could deal with a flood threat. So again, Francine is going to pack a punch from pretty much the North Mexican coastline all the way over towards Mississippi. Just quite a slamming from what is expected to be a potent hurricane. So that'll do it tonight. If you're in Louisiana, you guys are under the gun from what is expected to be a Category 2 storm. You always got to be ready, they say, for a category higher, which would be a major hurricane, a Category 3. So Francine is not expected to be a slouch, okay? So get ready. Be looking at your hurricane plans, where you might evacuate to. Make sure prescriptions are filled. Make sure you get money from the ATM. Make sure you have the cash on hand and all the important documents you need. And get ready, because Francine should be headed your way along the Louisiana coastline by Wednesday. I'm Mike Naso, and we'll talk more about the other systems, the waves in the Atlantic next time, and of course more on Francine.